Well, on the show this evening, we focus on this unique show that happened in Ahmedabad over the weekend. 15,000 people, we are told by some estimates, flocked to this real estate deal, which was touted as the first of its kind. Who are the people who went there and why did they go there? And what does it say about a country that we have to have shows, property deals which exclusively cater to the Muslim community?
For Rasool Khan Pathan, a retired government employee, a hunt for a house outside Ahmedabad's walled city area seems unending. In a city bursting at the seams with residential townships, Pathan realizes that beneath the booming reality sector lies an uncomfortable reality, and that is why this exhibition held in Ahmedabad over the weekend generated hope. Touted as the country's first Muslim property show, the 3-day exhibition was held to tap the community's investment potential. But even as over 20 builders, amongst them a few Hindu developers, participated, for Pathan, the swanky upmarket Hindu-dominated residential schemes on the western side of Ahmedabad still remain a no-go area.
उसका कारण है कि वहाँ इसलिए नहीं लेते कि हम अकेले पड़ जाएं, कम्युनिटी का हिसाब ऐसा अलग हो गया यहाँ पर, यानी हाँ हिंदूज अलग रहते हैं, ये सब हो गया है, यानी जो हुक्मरान हैं इन्होंने सब दिलों के बंटवारे कर दिए हैं, ये हिसाब से क्या डर लगता है और कुछ भी नहीं है.
Ali Hussain, the man behind the exhibition, also runs a web portal with a network of 12,000 odd Muslim businessmen in Gujarat offering various services.
कुछ बिल्डर वो लोग मना कर रहे थे कि भाई सॉरी हम कुछ स्पेसिफिक आपको रीजन नहीं बता सकते कि भाई व्हाई वी आर रिफ्यूजिंग बट वी आर नॉट गिविंग टू मुस्लिम. तो वो एक छोटा आइडिया था कि भाई चलो व्हाट अबाउट दिस पोटेंशियल बायर ग्रुप. उसके बाद में मुस्लिम एरिया के अंदर भी बहुत अच्छी स्कीम आने लगी, लोग बहुत ही वर्ल्ड क्लास एमिनिटीज़ बनाने लगे, बाहर से लोग ज़्यादा आने लगे, तो इसकी एक ऑलरेडी मैच्योर नीड थी ही. तो मैं ये समझता हूँ कि मेरे से ज़्यादा ये चीज़ सक्सेस होने के अंदर टाइम ने काम किया है.
But there's a flip side to tapping the investment potential, an argument that the exclusive property show could only lead to more ghettoization. Consider this, the schemes on offer by 20 odd builders were mostly in areas which have sizable Muslim presence.
Areas such as this one, the Sarkhet Juhapura area, also Ramol and Narol areas on the outskirts of Ahmedabad which have sizable Muslim presence. Builders admit that the demand for housing schemes from the Muslim community comes for such areas only, fueling fears of further ghettoization.
Interestingly, the few Hindu builders at the exhibition had Muslim faces to promote their properties, like the owner of the Narayani Group, Pankaj Patel, whose Muslim partner Atif Ahmadi was trying to hard sell his properties. But for the majority community buyers, the marketing USP, it's a good investment option.
There are very few Muslim areas in Ahmedabad, तो वो भी हिसाब से appreciation के काफ़ी अच्छे chances है. And even Hindus have bought flats in Muslim schemes, मैंने वैसा कुछ भी नहीं है.
While the booming reality sector could be led by good economic sense, the concepts could instill a further sense of isolation among Muslim buyers. With camera person Natwar Parmar and Rohit Bhan in Ahmedabad, Madhusudan for NDTV.
So will we see more such shows across the country or do fears of ghettoization emerge from this? Let's ask that to our panelists this evening. We're joined by Jay Narayan Vyas. He's from the Gujarat government. We have J.S. Bandukwala, former professor from the Vadodara University. Sudhir Mishra joins us from Mumbai, filmmaker and filmmaker of movies like Hazaro Khwaishein Aisi. We also have Majid Memon, he's senior advocate and he also fought the case for Imran Hashmi, who had this case just some time ago saying that he couldn't get a place in Mumbai. And Dr. Tanveer Fazal is here in studio with me. He teaches in Jamia Millia University. J.S. Bandukwala, if I can start with you. And I just want to point out to all our viewers before we start that we wanted the organizers of this property fair to come and explain exactly what was the thinking behind this show, why is it, to just talk to us about it, but they felt that there had been too many media reports already and they didn't want to get into too much controversy, so they declined to participate in this show tonight. Professor Bandukwala, is this a matter of convenience to have shows like this, or is it a sad state of affairs?
See, in this issue we have to ask why is there so much ghettoization among Muslims? I think primarily it is because of two factors. One, Muslims just can't get a house anywhere, not just in Gujarat but all over the country.
Yes.
I don't think I don't think a Muslim can get a flat, you know, in Bombay or Delhi or even Calcutta. I think the usual argument is that that they eat non-veg food. But of course the problem is much more complicated in Gujarat, because in Gujarat you have the problem of communalization, and in the last riot 10 years ago there was a very serious attempt against those Muslims who were living in non-Muslim areas. I think this finally resulted in a mass migration towards selected Muslim localities. For example, in Juhapura, see that suddenly the population shot up in about 15 years from a few small villages to a population of over 4 lakhs.
Okay.
And without many facilities.
Yes. Yes.
So it just became one big ghetto.
Yes, it's interesting that you say that, you know, it happens in lots of other places across the country as well, and perhaps the Muslim community feels that. But Jai Narayan Vyas, did they seek your permission to hold such a property fair? Did they have to come and ask permission from the Gujarat government? And I wanted to know, what was your reaction when that happened? Did you think it was strange?
So I think this is seeing that this is like that famous story of 6 blind men and elephant. One sees only a particular part of the element, and I think I was listening to Professor Bandukwala very carefully. His argument generalizes the situation not only in Gujarat but he says all over India. Now Professor Bandukwala is invited to come to my residence. Next door neighbor of to me in Gandhinagar is a Muslim gentleman who has built his house and is staying there for the period even before these 2002 he is talking about. So you are trying to generalize bit too much.
No.
Fact is, somebody has seen.
Okay.
You are talking about market driven economy, and if somebody has seen an opportunity to market a product with a USP of constructing houses in a particular location, you know, it is not only for Muslims, even for Hindus there are some societies which are built for exclusively for a particular community, not only particular community but particular community from a particular village. Now does this mean a ghettoization? So I think this is generalizing things too far. On the contrary, this replies squarely on the face of those critics of Gujarat who are talking about the affairs of pertaining to minorities without getting into Gujarat's minority segment carefully.
So you don't think
this
it's
shows
worrying at all?
increasing buying power, this shows increasing economic power of a minority community. Why don't you look at it?
Okay, okay. So you're saying the fact that they chose Ahmedabad to cater, because you know the people, the interviews, I don't know if you heard the interviews that we played out in the story, and they were saying what was, what was telling was that they were saying that people, because they don't get rent, it wasn't because of anything else. Yes, we understand it's a great business thing, that's what they were also talking about. It's just that in the interviews, Mr. Vyas, they said that because of the fact that they don't get places to stay anywhere else, because of that, they had to have an exclusive. You don't think that that's worrying?
See, I would like to say perceptions differ. If we apply the same logic that you are trying to apply to housing, the same logic should apply to the business also. Then there should be a segregation of the businesses. Everywhere you go, you will find a segregation, which is not happening. So generalizing a locational choice of a community which is having increasing buying power, and therefore somebody is getting interested in it as a market, I think is taking the things too far.
Okay, Sudhir Mishra,
it's only a perception that is made out to be, and not the reality at the ground level.
okay, so you're saying it's just a perception, and what's wrong with that? Sudhir Mishra, I was talking when I was researching this story, I was speaking with friends, and you know, there is a friend of mine who went to Mumbai once, and he's a photographer, and he tried to find a place, and he happens to be Muslim, and he tried to...
Mustafa Qureshi.
Yes, and he said that he got a lot of help from you. He tried to look for a place for a long time, and he said that then, you know, you tried to help him. So would you say that this kind of problem, you know, Ahmedabad, yes, has a Muslim property fair, but this kind of problem exists everywhere, or would you say it's only in certain places?
No, unfortunately, you know, I mean, you know, it exists in some way or the other everywhere. It's not that Muslims don't get flats at all. Maybe at the upper crust they don't have too much of a problem, where communities fade away and economic communities become, you know, integrative, and you belong to a upper class economic community, then maybe, you know, the problem fades away. But of course there is a problem, and if you close your eyes to it, and it leads to will lead to very dangerous things, the ghettoization of Muslims. In India, in any way, is a ghettoized country. You know, you are ghettoized by caste. You sort of don't sit with each other. You don't sit and eat with each other. Therefore, rumor mongering is possible. You don't know the other, and if you don't know the other, you can be told different things about the other. I mean, then it would lead to Muslim schools in that area, then it would lead, I mean, I think it's kind of absurd, and having come from a city where it is non-ghettoized, and probably the only non-ghettoized city in the country where there's never been a communal riot, which is Lucknow, I find this really, you know, I mean, amazing and frightening, you know, because what would I do, what would I be without this Muslim friend of mine? What would I be without his mother or his uncle, or the stories I heard? What would I be without the social equality stories of Islam? You know, what would I be? What would my clothes be? What would my language be? Would I be the same filmmaker? So I mean, it's, you know, I think it's really dangerous what is happening, and it's not that it happens all the time. It's not that you should, you know, panic and that a Muslim cannot find a flat, but it has been difficult, as in the case of Mustafa, whom I've tried to help, or in many other cases. Where excuses are given, murmurs are held, you know, you hear story, then excuses of vegetarianism and stuff you hear. But, you know, I mean, and there is a problem, and therefore, then, you know, and in Bombay the problem, in Mumbai the problem is otherwise. One Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi refused to inaugurate a tournament of Hindu Gymkhana versus Muslim Gymkhana, because he said, what is this? Before the freedom, you know, of our country. So I mean, it has always been, and Bombay has been ghettoized a lot, and you discovered that in the riots, when the riots occurred, suddenly you discovered that you were not living in a cosmopolitan city, you know.
Sure.
And it leads to that when it happens, you know.
And you're right, Sudhir Mishra, talking about the fact that lots of times you just hear rumors, and perhaps we don't see many people, you know, taking legal recourse to this. But Majid Memon, your client, in this case, famous actor Imran Hashmi did. What happened to that case?
No, let me first make it very clear that let us not single out a case. You see, this debate, subject of debate, is indeed a very serious subject, and this trend which we are discussing is not in the best interest of integrated country. You know, we have been promoting harmony among the different communities. This is, you know, diverse religion, diverse culture. We have all been, in particularly in Mumbai, which has been all along a cosmopolitan city for several years, save that aberration of that 1992-93. Now let me make it very clear that, you know, Muslim, now we are talking of Ahmedabad. I want to ask our friends who have just spoken before me that Narendra Modi has been proclaiming at the top of his voice that there is no fear to Muslims and Muslims are also getting justice. Then I don't think there should be any problem in Ahmedabad with regard to getting a residence by a Muslim in any area that he chooses. You know, he may have his economic compulsions, he may have his many other compulsions, and then if he wants to stay in a particular area,
Yes.
it would be improper, unfair to refuse him accommodation or stay in a particular area only because he happens to be Muslim. This is very sad. This is against the constitutional guarantees. This is against the spirit of our democracy, our secularism. And unfortunately, in the city of Mumbai, we are sorry whenever we are confronted with the cases like this. Now, the case which you are referring to is that Imran Hashmi.
Yes.
You know, he's a celebrity. Of course, people know him because he's a known face. Yet he was refused flat in a particular society because he happened to be a Muslim. But then we intervened and we took the matter, and then we got it clarified by the secretary and the chairman of that society that no, the flat is not being refused to him because he is a Muslim, because they had no courage to say so. Had they said so, we would have pulled them to court, because that would be violation of the constitutional right of Imran Hashmi.
He didn't
the
get the
same
flat
thing happens anywhere in the country. But just 1 minute. No, just 1 minute. No, that was a different story. For certain other reasons he didn't go. Now let me tell you one more thing. See, anywhere in India, we must promote and encourage the togetherness between Hindus and Muslims, who are the two major community in building up a future of India tomorrow. You see, Muslims, why should they be scared? Why Muslims cannot mingle with Hindus and then contribute shoulder to shoulder with their elder brothers Hindus now?
Mr. Memon, I just want to point out to you, I just want to point out to all our panelists as well that like Imran Hashmi, we are also showing, our viewers at home can also see Shabana Azmi's quote running on the screen when she talked about the fact that even she, despite being such an award-winning actress and so well known, even she faced the problem of not being able to find a place. I just want to ask Dr. Fazl here, as an academic, and you teach in Jamia Millia Islamia, do you think that this kind of trend, we can see these kind of shows of exclusively for one community being held in other parts of the country as well, or do you think this is just a one-off?
There are already property dealers or builders who are
exclusively dealing to one
advertising on this basis, and even in Delhi and around there are societies which have been constructed around community-specific identities, etc. I have a problem with that word ghetto itself because of its association with Nazi Germany. The situation is not like that in India. Gujarat might be an exception. But at the same time, if you see the pattern of settlement, all along Indian history, the cities have always been...
Yeah, Mr. Vyas, I'll give you a chance to just counter that. Let him just speak for the first time, yeah.
Cities have always been, divided along, community-specific localities, which did not necessarily mean that the communities were in conflict. They would meet in the bazaar, they would meet in many places, for instance at the Sufi saints, Mazar, etc. But at the same time, they would love to live in their own specific localities, and that's how communities developed, settlements developed. And more or less, if you see, usually conflict situation or communalism itself has been one of the triggers because of which such community-specific or minority-specific localities have been formed. But at the same time, they have also preferred to live together for a variety of other reasons, including cultural expressions, for example. Now, if you see the new housing societies which are coming up, they do not have necessarily those religious spaces identified within. But yet, in all these societies, you will see eventually a temple coming up. But you would never see a mosque coming up. Now, where would the Muslim who is religious and has, would like to express it, would go to? So, therefore, we have to keep these things in mind at the same time while discussing Muslim property fair, etc. I don't know what is Mr. Vyas,
No, he's objecting to what you said about Gujarat. But I just want to ask Professor Bandukwala, one of the people in the story which we showed, said that in Gujarat they felt that you need to have this kind of property show because even if you have the money, you can't move and you move out to a better area. Is that the case, would you say?
See, I'll again emphasize over here, I don't see an alternative to this ghettoization just now. The correct approach is that take these ghettos and make it more livable. Now this is possible by supplying proper water, drainage, garbage lighting. See, these will make a big difference. But see, the current problem is that the price of land has suddenly shot up so high because all Muslims would like to prefer to live in these ghettos. For example, a friend of mine had bought a small bungalow a few years ago. 2 years ago it was priced at 27 lakhs. Today it is priced at 70 lakhs. Now suddenly such a huge jump in prices, this means that Muslims are desperate to move to these areas. But I must say one other big problem in Gujarat is that these areas have no corporators who are Muslims. For example, in Baroda the area is Tandalja. Tandalja has about 50,000 Muslims living. But deliberately the wards were so divided that the Muslim area was cut into 3 different wards. Into 3 different wards. The result was that there are no Muslim corporators.
Okay, so they don't find their voice represented
no
as well.
And with no Muslim corporators.
Okay. No, so I just want to get
you don't get any facilities.
Mr. Vyas to just respond to that, and also, listening to all these voices, where you would say that all our panelists agree that this is a problem everywhere. In fact, Dr. Fazal was talking about how the new societies everywhere coming up, they have this problem as well. But would you admit that it shows, by having a fair like this, it shows that people don't feel safe living, anywhere else other than their own community? Do you think that's a problem? Would you admit that's a huge problem?
Are you asking me?
No, Mr. Vyas.
Are you asking me?
See, I would like to look at the issues which are being raised by some of my friends slightly differently. Number one, let me reassure my friend who was telling that Gujarat is an exception as far as this word ghetto should be used. I think he should come to Gujarat and see for himself the kind of economic development the minority community has gone through. This is not what I am telling, but this is Sachar Commission's report which certifies it. Number one. Number two, community-specific societies or settlements are not uncommon. What by and large Professor Bandukwala was telling, and I hold him in high esteem, are the issues which are issues of poverty-led deprivations. Whether they are Muslim settlements or Hindu settlements, the process of urbanization, economic opportunities, not enough land being available, and therefore the kind of unplanned developments they are taking place on the outskirts or at certain locations in these kind of urban centers, they are all poverty-led deprivations which are the kind of reasons for the lack of infrastructure Professor Bandukwala was talking about. They are not community specific, they are basically the economic status specific deprivations.
But there are certain areas, Mr.
That's common to
but there are
whether
certain
it is
areas
one community or the other community.
But there are certain areas, won't you admit, which are community specific as well. For instance, Juhapura, and that is a Muslim dominated area.
So are the areas. So I would not discuss this community-based separation method because we are one country and the country must live in harmony.
Just a simple
Last 10 years Gujarat has been living in harmony, that despite.
Of course, no one's talking about 2002. I'm just talking about right now.
Gujarat's development last 10 years, we never had any problem.
The fact that there is a fair like this in Ahmedabad, it's the only place that a fair exclusively for Muslims has been held. Do you think, would you admit that it shows that there is a kind of problem and there is a bit of a fear within the community about mingling with others, about living with them, that they feel safer living amongst themselves? Do you admit that it shows that something's not right?
See, this is much complex an issue, as I told you. Community-based societies or community-based constructions and settlements are not uncommon in other cities. and
No
it
one's
should be viewed
disputing
like that only.
No
I
one's
think we are
disputing
trying to make a mountain out of a mole,
this property
blowing
sale
up
has
the
been
problem
held there.
beyond all dimensions.
Okay. Okay. I just want to ask you, what role do
So
you
what's
think?
wrong in it?
Okay, okay, that's fine, sir. You've made your point.
Some community is economically becoming prosperous, and if for them somebody is organizing a property show on development which is specific to them and which takes care of some of their basic infrastructure needs as well as social infrastructure needs.
Sudhir
What's
Mishra,
wrong in it?
Sudhir Mishra, would you like to,
it was
would you like to counter that? Mr. Vyas says,
doesn't mean road, water
if
and
there are community-specific fairs,
infrastructure means also
catering
social
to the wealthy in the
infrastructure.
community, there's nothing wrong with that.
No, it's absurd. I mean, this is like some faith healers taking sort of advantage of terminally dead or something. You know, I mean, this is it's a business opportunity which people grab in our times, but you know, I think, you know, it indicates something else. It indicates that people are not feeling safe. I think the urge of everyone is to intermingle, and the fundamental urge is that, and there is something else that is coming in between. So, I mean, it shows a symptom which should be addressed. You know, I mean, without saying that, I mean, of course, Muslims and Hindus in some places live well together, and there is another stream of people which is equally vibrant, which does not believe in this ghettoization. So it's not as if in India only one stream exists. But this indicates a lack of safety, a feeling of, feeling insecure. And if the state is not giving that feeling, without defending itself too much, they should address this issue and find out, because it's an indication of something deeper which should be addressed. And in Mumbai, in many places, this is always on the surface, and these discussions always happen.
Yes,
so it is a
Mr.
genuine
Memon also
problem.
wanted to come in there.
And
Yes, I only wanted to convey as a conclusion of this important debate that, look here, if we believe in harmonious relationship and forgetting the past differences, whether it was in Ahmedabad or in Mumbai or anywhere else, riots between the two major communities of this country, in the best interest of our country, where Hindus and Muslims must live in peace and harmony with togetherness, shoulder to shoulder, they should work for development of the country. If this is the idea, then we must discourage anything that tends to isolate a community or distances a community from the other, and therefore the conclusion of this debate should be that we would not promote, you see, anything which says that Hindus only will stay here and Muslims only will stay here.
Okay,
I am against that.
Okay, Dr. Fazal, I just wanted to ask you, how do you think, if you're saying this is happening in lots of other places?
You are totally rejecting
Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Vyas, you were saying?
Or community specific infrastructure. I think the gentleman is trying to totally reject the theory of social or community based infrastructure. There are community specific infrastructure needs, social infrastructure needs, for reason of which one would like to stay together. That doesn't mean that you are segregated in every walk of life.
Okay, you made that point, but Dr. Fazal, I wanted to find out.
And that doesn't also pass any adverse comment on the state.
I mean,
Is there any way the state, anything that the state
no
can do,
problem
any
having a
role that
mosque
they
in
can
a
play
cosmopolitan
to
area.
perhaps fix this situation, or to, you know, what kind of role can they play?
The best thing which has to be done is, I think that there has to be changes brought into the housing laws, etc.
In every state?
In every state all over, and ensure that adequate number of various kinds of communities do get a share in housing allotments.
Are you talking about quotas within housing allotments?
There are various ways in which you can do it, not necessarily you may have a quota, but for example, there is in the DDA scheme for SCs and STs. You can also have it for the minorities as well, so as to promote for a good interest of the country, so as to promote the composite nationalism which we have upheld. I am opposed to what Mr. Vyas is trying to say, that just because there are I explained this, that there are reasons because of which ghettos could be formed, such as religious, cultural expressions which do not get expression in other composite areas, and therefore minorities groups like to stay together, but that shouldn't be promoted. You know, one should ensure that there are such localities which are created in which all communities can live, and not only in harmony, but they also find their own cultural identity being preserved in such areas. At the same time, they are able to meet with other communities. The old idea of communities living but living together separately.
Okay.
That should be upheld.
And Jainara and Vyas, what do you think of this suggestion of encouraging people to live together by perhaps offering them, you know, fixing the housing laws and all? Do you think that's feasible?
Well, I think that we are trying to see too much behind this. There is, you know, there is no ban on a particular community buying a house or a property elsewhere. On the contrary, by making these kind of compulsions, you will compromise the fundamental rights of an individual. Where do I buy my property? Where do I stay? Let that right remain with me. Why are we thinking that this is a sign of ghettoization and that will only segregate the society?
Okay, but we're not talking about those people, about people's right to live. We're also talking about the people who have a right to live wherever they want to, and they say that they're being refused that on the basis of their religion. We're talking about those people. Professor Bandukwala, last words to you. Would you like to sum up? What do you think that the government can do, perhaps fix the situation, the kind of fear that you were saying that some of the people that you have met have talked about? How do you think the government can play a role in fixing that? Or can they really? Professor Bandukwala?
Yes. You know, ultimately ghettoization runs exactly counter to our whole idea of a secular state. See, ultimately we'll have to break this ghettoization.
Yes, yes.
See, America faced the very same problem when American blacks were not allowed to move into white areas.
Yes.
But then the Supreme Court over there stepped in and they brought in very strict legislation also.
Yes.
To see that that blacks can stay wherever they wanted.
Well,
now the same thing must happen in India.
Professor Bandukwala, I'm so sorry, but we're totally out of time, and perhaps those are the kind of, you know, those are the kind of interventions that we need. And as Dr. Fazal is saying, okay, we're totally out of time though, Dr. Fazal. So thanks very much. You have made quite a suggestion, and it's for our policymakers to figure out. Jainara and Vyas from the Gujarat government, thanks very much for joining us. JS Bandukwala, Sudhir Mishra, Majid Memon and Dr. Fazal here in the studio. Thanks very much.